Greetings. I'm Professor Tamer Çavuşgil at Georgia State University. I have the pleasure of welcoming you from all over the world. And of course, we have a very special guest today, which I will introduce in just a moment. But those of you who have been tuning in for the past 4 years, welcome back. We've developed over the last 4 years a great audience of some 3,000 scholars, educators, and practitioners from around the world. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Just as a reminder, all of our webinars are recorded and are available on Zoom, on the YouTube, as well as on Georgia State University Cyber website. So if you'd like to share this conversation with your colleagues, with your students, please feel free to do that. A little bit of background, this series of webinars, which have to deal with conversations with educators, business practitioners on teaching, on research, as well as current business issues, are sponsored by a cyber consortium, Cyber MSI Consortium. 9 other cyber centers for international business are part of this collaboration, and we come to you with their support as well. And you have seen their names in one of the slides that ran earlier. So welcome back. There will be a short survey when you exit, when we are done with our conversation today. There will be a 5-question short survey that you will receive in your email box. Please respond to those questions and suggest topics and speakers for future webinars like this one. Everyone except panelists is muted in the webinar. Please use the Q&A and chat if you like for questions, comments. Today, our guest, a very special guest, has allowed us to go over time in a sense. Typically, our webinars are 1 hour, but depending upon your participation, comments, and questions, we are able to go beyond the typical 55 minutes. And Professor Anne-Wil Harzing, I will again introduce her in just a second, has put together a very nice set of slides. So if you have joined us today, we will mail those to you as well. So I know question comes up, are these slides available to us? So welcome everybody. Actually, Professor Anne-Wil Harzing, who joined us today from UK, is not necessarily new to these webinar series because we've had her before. Wonderful conversations that attracted a lot of good reviews and new circulations as well. Anne-Wil Harzing is Emerita Professor of International Management at Middlesex University in London. And she has obviously a very stellar publication, scholarship record with more than 90 refereed journal articles, books, best-selling textbooks, especially in international human resource management. More than a dozen of her articles have won research awards and distinctions, and her publications have been cited more than, I should say, 15,000 times in journals listed in Web of Science, and something like 29,000 times in Google Scholar for a H index of 71. She is also a distinguished member of the AIB Fellows, a select group of distinguished AIB members who are recognized for their outstanding contributions to scholarly development in IB. But I think one of the most interesting and meritorious features of our guest today, Professor Anne-Wil Harzing, is that she has a great heart. And she's very generous with her time and investing a lot of time and effort over so many years in the development of young scholars in international business and business in general. So she has maintained since 1999 a website with resources for academic publishing, assessment of research and journal quality, free software to conduct citation analysis. Her Publish and Perish is used by more than 2 million academics, librarians, and students and government officials. She is one of the founding members of SIGNA, a network of more than 400 female scholars, and co-founder of Positive Academia movement. She also has an active blog, posting weekly on all things academia, and YouTube channel. I think many of you who are regulars know about these resources, but it's important to reiterate them as well. So, Anne-Wil, today's topic is especially interesting and helpful for scholars, young and even maybe mid and late career stages. I was thinking about this topic. It's one I guess can be rather purposeful and organize about planning, designing their career, or I guess you can leave it to uh, haphazardly, perhaps approach it haphazardly and not be so disciplined about organizing, planning your career. So today's, I think, advice that you'll share with our colleagues here will be very helpful to, I think, all of us at various stages of our careers. So let me start out by thanking you again for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you back, and we look forward to your comments and your recommendations for our colleagues here today, Anne.
Thank you so much, Summer, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome to everyone. I've been having a peek at the list of participants, and there's lots of familiar names, lots of unfamiliar names, and I have already seen that there are academics at 3 different career stages, lots of early career researchers, but I've also seen a couple of mid and late career researchers. So I hope all of you will find something of interest in the session today. Last time I was in the webinar series, Tamara and I just had a conversation. But this time we decided to do it a little bit differently and have short sections of presentation and then followed by conversation. Hopefully also with all of you, although you will be limited to putting your questions in the Q&A. So if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A so that we can talk about them after the presentation. So there will be 3 stages: early career, mid-career, late career, and after each stage there will be a little bit of time to have a discussion about the topics. So I will now share my slides, and that should allow us to see my presentation. So if I've done this correctly, you should now see my presentation, and you should
Yes,
also see me in the top right-hand corner. Tamar, is that the case?
that's the case.
Excellent. Okay, then I think we're all ready to go. So today we're talking about navigating research across career stages. And when I was thinking about this topic, I thought I needed to come up with a memorable shortcut for this so that you would not only listen to the presentation now, but in a few days and maybe even a few weeks or a few months, you would remember some of the presentation. We know this is always a challenge if we're teaching our students to convey information in a way that is memorable. So I came up with the ABC of navigating research across career stages. So for each career stage, we were talking about an A, a B, and a C. And we're all aware that research is a crucial element of our academic careers, but we're often not so clear how this plays out across the various career stages, whether this is different across early, mid, and late career. So I will take kind of a bird's eye view. Obviously, I can't go into detail for each of the stages given the time we have, but I will go on a bird's eye view of what mindsets we need to navigate research in the different career stages. So I won't be focusing on really specific tips and tricks, but I have included some further guidance towards the end of the presentation that directs you to some resources in case you're interested. So let's move on to a quick overview first. Really, if you look at the design of this slide, you will see connections. And that's not a coincidence because I strongly feel that connections, networks, and collaborations matter in each of the career stages. And these connections, collaborations, networks could be research collaborations with co-authors. It could be being part of a team of PhD supervisors. It could be meeting other academics at conferences or joining maybe a special interest group or a research cluster or a network that is maybe important to your identity, your demographic identity, such as gender or ethnicity. You could also be talking about a network of mentors, or you could even be talking about creating a network on social media. But it's all about collaboration. So in academia, we spend quite a lot of time working on our own, but I strongly believe that the best research outcomes are usually achieved by interacting with others. So keep that background in mind when we move across the career stages. And then there's another analogy I want to make, which I feel quite strongly about before we move to the early career stage. And that is that I think academia is really better seen as a marathon. It's not a sprint. And this is really important at the early career stage and the mid-career stage as well, but even at the late career stage, because your race really isn't run when you've reached the full professorship. It's just a different part of the marathon. And many academic careers might span 4 or 5 decades. So just like with a marathon, the key is really to pace yourself. The key is endurance. So not everything needs to happen right now. And especially in the early career stage, that's really important to keep in mind. And then also, I don't know whether you know anyone in your environment who is running marathons, but if you talk to them, everyone seems to have a different reason for running a marathon. It could include maybe personal growth, pushing yourself to overcome obstacles, running for a charity maybe. There's very few people who actually run a marathon to win. It's really about realizing your potential. And there isn't really one best way to run a marathon. And the same is true for academic careers. I also think it's important to remember that just like marathon runners have different starting points, some might be younger, older, better trained, might be athletes, others might be more casual workers. So that's true for academics as well. Even apart from all the demographic differences we have, if you look at people like me who were the first in their family to go to university, you have a very different start in academia than when you grow up in a family where you have a lot of family members who are academics. Or if, like me, you grow up in a country where education is not just high quality, but also largely free, you have a very, very different starting point in your academic career than if you come from a country or background where you had to work 2 jobs to be able to go to university. So don't compare yourself with others. Compare yourself with the way you were when you started, because we all start from a different background. And then finally, really persistence is the key. And that's true both in marathons and as an academic. It helps if you're intelligent, it helps if you're lucky. But most of all, being successful in research involves a lot of bloody hard work. Bloody hard work, persistence, and resilience, and especially in the face of constant rejections, because being an academic is being faced with rejections, not necessarily on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly or a monthly basis. So I would suggest that really you don't scatter yourself too thinly and focus really on quality work that you're really passionate about, not scatter yourself with a huge number of projects. So that's the kind of the two things that are, I think, important for both, for all three career stages. But let's move on to the early career stage now, because I'm aware that many of you in the audience will be in an early career stage, and you will be keen to hear what you really would need to do in that career stage to start off maybe successfully. I've come up with three things here: ask, believe, and cultivate. And I would say that in your early career, it is really preparing the ground. It's preparing the ground for your future career. It means you need to take every opportunity you can to learn and experiment. So I would say one way to do this is to be really proactive and ask for advice. That way you are able to learn from others. You can ask more senior academics, you can ask a mentor, a co-author, maybe a colleague, or you could simply go online. There are actually dozens of websites dedicated to advice for researchers on pretty much any imaginable topic. You could also participate in peer networks, maybe related to your area of research interest. Or what is also often a good way is representing maybe your ECR colleagues in your own university, or maybe in a professional forum. Many of you work in international business, maybe in the International Academy of International Business, because we often learn even more when we represent others, because we look at the information differently. So consider getting involved in volunteering in that respect as well. I think what is really important to remember is that even though most of us, maybe all of us, think that we are unique individuals, we really aren't. Well, we are, but not in terms of the problems that we are experiencing in academia. Whatever your experience is in academia, someone else will have experienced this before. So please make sure that if you are struggling, ask for advice or go online, and don't struggle alone. So ask, ask, ask. So that's the first step that I would really like to emphasize. And then the B. The B is for believe. Believe in yourself, believe in your research passions. And I know that many of you have received maybe advice that says you need to spot a gap in the literature to publish. And that's true, and it isn't. Obviously, you're not going to publish something that has been widely published about before. But if you look at an issue just to spot a gap in the literature, you often end up doing research that leaves you completely cold. And really it's just an exercise in publishing. It's not about the research, it's about getting published. And you may well be able to do that for a few years. I think most academics have done this at some stage, but ultimately it will destroy your intrinsic motivation. And I think without intrinsic motivation, without real passion for the research you're doing, you might as well leave academia, because that is what being an academic is about. And then also, there's some other advice that I often hear, and that is, you shouldn't do me search. And when people said that to me the first time, I didn't understand what he meant. But what they mean, for instance, is that you can't do research on gender issues if you're female, or you can't do research on ethnicity if you're non-white. Because that's doing research, you're researching yourself. I think that's pure nonsense, because you are uniquely suited to study those topics because you have the personal experience. And they are not minority topics. There are as many women in the world, or more women in the world than men. And non-whites are a global majority. They're not a minority. They might be in some circumstances, but they're a very legitimate population to study. And remember, I don't think anyone ever, well, maybe the last couple of years, but before then, anyone blamed white male academics for studying white male managers. And that's what's happened for a long, long, long time. So if you have a big idea, then pursue it. Many academics have actually made groundbreaking contributions early on in their career. Tamar will know this as well, looking at the AIB fellows. There are quite a lot of AIB fellows who make really important contributions with their PhD. So do listen. Do listen to some advice, but don't listen to all advice. Be selective in the advice you follow. Where I do think you would be wise to follow the advice of seniors is if they tell you that your topic really isn't novel enough, because they've read more of the literature, so they have a better grasp usually of what has already been studied. But don't listen if they say this is too novel, you shouldn't do it. But do listen if they say this is really not novel enough, because they have some legitimacy if they say that. And then finally, I think what is really important here in the B of belief is don't measure yourself up against others. I mentioned that before. We all have different career paths. We all have different research paths. So we also all have our own struggles. And remember that even senior academics get rejections all the time. I'm sure Thomas still gets them too. In fact, senior academics probably get more rejections because they're working on a larger number of projects at the same time. If I look at my last 3 papers, 2 of them took between 3 or 4 journals to get published, and 1 of them took more than 5 years to get published. So as I said earlier, resilience is the key, and that's not just true for early career academics. So
And
we've
you
done A, we've done B,
Yeah.
so let's go to C now.
And Will, if you
Cultivate.
can pause for a second there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such an important point that you just made that I want to accentuate as well. Focus on publishing, but cautiously consider. It's it is also. I mean, I guess it was in the earlier slide. It was in B. The point about you don't know how people got there. So everybody's journey is so unique. So in achieving excellence, whether it's teaching or research or acceptance, let's say in the business community, making splash as a consultant, for example, it takes a lot of effort, and everybody's journey is different and sometimes painful, and there are trade-offs. So one needs to really ask themselves, what kind of a balance do I want in my own career? What is it that I want to create? How do I design my own? And there's a question from one of our participants, what if you find yourself in a teaching institution? So you make some sacrifices. Obviously, you spend a lot of time on teaching, preparing courses and delivering courses, a lot of time in the classroom. which means, not as much time for research. So you just have to accept that. So thank you for making this important point as well, the uniqueness of each journey.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to emphasize that, Tamara, and I'm really happy that you also said you don't know what their journey has been, because the problem is that as academics, and I have also done that, and I'm still doing that, you look at senior academics who've been really successful, and you see only their success, but you don't see the struggles that they have gone through. You don't see the sacrifices that maybe they have had to make. And these might be sacrifices that you are not prepared to make. So do look at your own progress on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, maybe take stock once a year, but don't compare yourself to others all the time. Um, if I can maybe say one thing about the person who mentioned being at a teaching institution, as Tamar said, it is really tough if you work at a teaching focused institution. The university I work for at the moment, or worked for, and then now Emerita, Middlesex University is also a teaching focused university. So many academics have really, really high teaching loads. So they find their own ways to do research in the concentrated periods between semesters. But many of them have also reframed their research interests to pedagogical research. So they do some of their research in the classroom. And that's really important, because that way you can create synergies between your teaching and your research. So there are different ways of doing this, but I acknowledge that it can be really, really hard. So maybe I'll finish with the C, and then we have a bit more time to see whether there's other questions as well. So cultivate the ground for the future. And I've put some actual ground here with some prop. You need to cultivate the ground to make sure it is fertile when you start branching out your research career. It really is the time as an early career academic to try many different things, different journals, different formats of writing, working with different people, and try and see a rejection as an opportunity to learn about what you should do differently, learn about another journal, but also realize that you do need a bit of a research portfolio. Just like with financial investments, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So make sure you have some projects that are maybe smaller, are easier to publish, don't have such a long timeline, and have other really big projects where you think you can make a really big quality contribution, maybe have a chance to publish that in a top journal, but not have all your eggs of the same size in the same basket. And then finally, I would say, even though early on in your career, a lot of your focus will be on publishing, I think it's really important to learn, in addition, obviously, to teaching and external engagement, but these are different topics altogether that we won't be able to cover in this webinar. Also start learning a bit more about funding and impact of your research, both academic impact, but also external societal impact. And also, early career is a really good time to start building your network. Because remember, once you publish, you would like other people to read your work. It's much easier to publicize your research if you have a network. If you can diffuse your research to people who are already familiar with you. And building up these relationships takes time. So that's the ABC. Ask, believe, cultivate. But I've also come up with one word to describe the early career stage. And if this was kind of a public webinar, I would go and ask all of you, or at least 5 of you, to guess before disclosing the word to build up the tension. But we can't do this here, so I'll show you the word right now. Survival. Really, early career, being an early career academic is mainly about surviving. Don't expect too much of yourself. Don't compare yourself to others all of the time. Make sure you survive those 5 years with your 5, 7 years with your sanity intact. And also, as I said, don't compare yourself to others all the time. We have a baby elephant here. The baby elephant doesn't expect to be able to run as fast or as far as their parents. They need to learn. So focus on survival. If you survive your early career stage, you've done well. Also, I would also say that take every opportunity to ask questions. When you're an ECR, you're actually in a really good situation, because you might not believe this, but no question is stupid. Everyone knows you're still learning. So it is very acceptable to ask questions. It's a great time to ask questions. You can ask questions later on in your career. Don't be concerned about that. But you might feel a bit more guarded, a bit more embarrassed about doing that, because you feel you should already know the answer. And as an early career academic, you're not expected to know the answer. So do make sure, coming back to the A, that you ask. So, early
that's
career
a
stage.
great point as well. In a sense, don't be a lone ranger. In academia, fortunately, we are surrounded at our own school or other schools, or when we attend conferences and workshops with many colleagues, different stages of their career, different types of experiences, and just developing that network and developing the confidence also to ask the questions. Silly questions, or something that worries you about teaching or research or a particular journal. I think asking questions comfortably and relying upon advice, I think, is so important early in the early career
Absolutely.
stage.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you for
So,
making
so
that
I'm
point.
going to try now to switch to another screen, which should be, you should
Yes.
be able to see me and Tamara a bit more clearly. Is this
Yes.
working? Yeah, excellent.
So we're not there yet, but
Excellent. So about asking silly questions, I still remember that when I was starting out as an academic, I had really no clue about journals and kind of what all these different journals were about. And I can remember, because I started teaching in a university before I did my PhD. That was quite normal in the Netherlands at that time. So I asked my head of department, kind of, people are talking about top journals, but I don't understand. So what's the difference between that journal and Harvard Business Review or a magazine? And I really didn't know. And now I think, oh my God, that was just such a stupid question. But then thinking again, no, it wasn't, because how was I supposed to know? It's just a bit ironic that a lot of people now know me from the journal quality list, which ranks all these journals. So now I'm seen as an expert in this field, but I started out knowing absolutely nothing about any of this. So that's how we all need to start, like that little chicken who's just come out of the egg, and still needs to learn. So I'm looking at the Q&A now to see whether any of you have
yeah,
posted.
I think we're okay right now, but I
Yeah.
encourage everybody to please comment and ask questions. Otherwise, we'll move on to the mid-career.
To the mid-career stage, yeah, and if you questions are good, but if you have other ideas about specific challenges that you feel are things that you experience in one of the career stages and you think colleagues experience too that I've completely forgotten about, I will be really, really happy to hear about those.
Yeah, I guess
So,
there is one question, Anvil, from one of our participants, Katrina Mans, about she says, I remember working on my dissertation and engaging in first generation Black students in STEM as
mhm.
my participants, and was told by one of my committee members that I was too close to the subject matter to be objective. But I think
Yeah,
you kind of dealt with that issue,
yeah,
didn't you? I mean, it's perfectly fine. I mean,
yeah,
you know a lot. I mean, you're closer to that situation.
yeah,
So who was better
exactly.
than you to carry
Yeah,
on that kind of
exactly.
research?
Yeah, and and yeah, that really that point always annoys me, to be honest. And I have received that comment too. I remember when I wrote with two other female academics. We wrote an article about the challenges that female academics experience. And one of the reviewers suggested that we should have a male co-author as well, because we couldn't possibly be objective about this topic, as if the male co-author would know lots of things that we didn't know about the challenges. No, we are females, but we are first of all researchers. Just because we are female doesn't mean that we can't study female academics. Just because you are a black academic doesn't mean you can't have a study of first in the family black students. You know the topic, you know the experiences, and you're able to relate to your participants much better than another researcher would. So well done for doing that. Okay, so I will move back to my slides and we'll go to the mid career stage. And some of you will be at the mid career stage, others might still be at the early career stage or might be at a late career stage already. But you will hopefully be able to pick up some key issues from this. So let's move on to mid-career. So again, we have the ABC, and we talk about adjusting, balancing, and creating. And I'll leave you to guess what the creating is for a moment. Adjust your research trajectory, balance the many plates in the air, and create your unique research profile. I actually think that in many ways, being at the mid-career stage is possibly the toughest part of an academic, because everyone thinks that being an ECR is the hardest part of the academic journey, and sometimes it can be, but it's definitely not true for everyone, because as an ECR, you often get lots of support. You can participate in networks that have been set up specifically for your career stage. You get often time allowances to get settled in your career. Sometimes you even get startup budgets. And as we said before, you can ask lots of silly questions. But just like when you are a PhD student, you think you are extremely busy when you are an ECR, but then when you're like 5-7 years into your career, and maybe you are a senior lecturer or even an associate professor, you realize that you only get busier the further you get on in your academic career. And yes, you may have a few publications, you may have a bit more confidence, but you are no longer junior. And you're suddenly expected to forge your own path, often without much support. And that's really not easy. So I really think there's a couple of things that are important if you are at your mid career stage. And the first one is to to adjust your research trajectory. As an ECR, you've tried many different things. And obviously, we never stop learning and experimenting. But at the mid-career stage is really a good time to take stock and make some tough choices. What worked? What didn't? What did you really enjoy? What did you actually not enjoy or even hate? Do you have maybe a better idea of what your strengths and weaknesses are? At this career stage, it's really important to make some choices. And let me move myself back to the top because I realize I'm obscuring some of the text. So at this career stage, you need to make some tough choices. You also need to make some tough choices because you will be expected to take on some leadership roles, maybe in your own institution as head of a research cluster, or maybe even as program director of the PhD program, or in the academic community. Could be an editorial board member in a journal. It could be an associate editor. These can all be great ways to learn more about research. And with increasing seniority, you're also now expected to broaden your portfolio, not just publishing, but also maybe getting grants and looking at the external impacts and the societal impact of your research. So there are a lot of things to take into account at the mid-career stage. So the B really is about balance. It's about balancing all the plates or the stones in this picture in the air, and this can be incredibly tough because you are expected now to take on higher level teaching duties. It's not just the classroom teaching, but it's also course redesign. It's managing lots of tutors, managing programs. You're also expected to take your turn in committees, in leadership roles. And it makes finding research time a lot more difficult. At the same time, at a mid-career stage, this is often combined with balancing lots of plates in your personal life. You may have young children. You may still be facing precarity in your job or in your accommodation. And I know, of course, that ECRs face a lot of precarity too, but sometimes that's a bit easier to cope with if you're still in your 20s or your early 30s and you don't have dependents. But when you do, this is getting really tough. So creating a sustainable career that doesn't take over your whole private life might be really hard. So I can really recommend you to watch a video that was done by one of my good co-authors and fellow Signa members on sustainable careers. I'm sure you will learn a lot from that as well. So in this stage, keep talking to your mentors. They are as valuable now as they are in the early career stage, but also start asking them for sponsorship, asking them to really sponsor you in your career. Be specific about what you need. Do you need maybe invitations to give a keynote speech or a seminar at a university? Would you like to take on editorial positions? Do you need external connections with industry? Do you want to take on leadership positions and do you need someone to champion you? Maybe do you need an introduction to an academic that you want to work with? Just ask them. They may not be able to help all the time, but if you don't ask, you will never find out. Do remember that mentors are always overwhelmed too. So you may want to consider to supplement advice from your mentors with maybe talking to a career coach at this stage or join a peer network for support as well. But again, make sure that you reach out. And then the C, creating your unique research profile. It's really important to start building that profile. What do you want people to know you for. You want them to know you for a big contribution you're making. So this means you need to start thinking about research agendas, not just a list of papers. It's about a research agenda. And you need to start working more independently. If you've published to date simply with your PhD supervisor or with the first senior co-author you published with, then this is the time to branch out and start working with other people as well. It also helps if you start building up your public profile a bit more consistently. You can do the best research in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then they can't really appreciate it. So populate all your social media profiles, but also try to become a bit more visible through talks at universities, maybe running webinars or organizing conference sessions or symposia. And it may help to start thinking about what would you like to become really known for in the next 5 to 10 years, and what do you need to get there? So put yourself in your own shoes in 5 to 10 years, and think about, well, if you continue your career like you do now, will you get there? And if you're not, are you okay with that? Maybe you are, but you need to know. So the key words for mid-career, I think, is identity. Finding your research identity. Some of you find that very early in your early career already, but if you haven't yet, then mid-career really is the stage to do this. Finding your research and academic identity and leveraging your own strengths. So that's the key challenge in the mid-career phase. And finding your unique identity. We have 4 flamingos here, but they're all a little bit different. And I think every academic is different too. So I'm going to switch over to the other screen so we can see each other a bit better and see whether there's any questions about mid-career.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions, Anne-Wil, we can address. One question from Yasem and Yazdan Pana. This is about I guess, the markers, whether or not there are hard markers, how many years does it take before you get to the mid-career, or you consider yourself late career. And so, again, this is highly individualized. I don't think there's a set number of years, but how would you respond to that?
Yeah, it depends on the context as well. You're probably aware that for some funding organizations, they might have specific stages. Say you need to be within 5 to 7 years of your finishing your PhD to apply for a particular grant. But outside that context, it really depends, as Tamara said, on the individual. And also on their personal circumstances. If you have taken out time to raise children, if you have caring duties, if you maybe have other responsibilities, then it will take longer to move from the early career stage to the mid-career stage. So there are no fixed rules, but typically people would say 5 to 7 years early career stage, then maybe another 5 to 7 years mid-career. But for some, it might take 10 years. It took me 10 years to go from starting working in academia to go to a senior lecturer level. So yeah, everyone is different in that respect.
And there's another comment about, other types of demands on one's time, such as grant writing, or, being responsible for a course coordinator, for example, or taking on administrative position, such as being a chair or being a leader in some capacity. But in a sense, it's fitting into your ecosystem where you happen to be, where you find yourself, isn't it? I mean, each institution is different. So, and you are different, but you still need to fit in and align yourself with the goals of the institution. So it is a fine balance, isn't it? That you have to kind of, you have your own objectives, but then you have to work within the rules and
Yeah,
the resources of the
yeah,
particular institution you find yourself in.
yeah.
You want to,
Absolutely. And there's always those institutional constraints, and um, sometimes you need to compromise a little bit to accommodate those constraints. Different country systems also differ. I mean, in some countries, it is not that common to change institutions. In other countries, it is very common to do that. In the UK, for instance, there are a lot of academics who might only work at an institution for 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years, and they might move on to another institution. They may do that even when they are full professors. In other countries, you stay typically within the same institution once you've reached a full professorship. But I would say that if you really find that the institutional constraints are such that you feel you have to compromise too much. You have to really give up what you believe in and what you feel your academic identity is. Then it might be time to try to find another institution that appreciates the strengths that you have to offer. Because a lot of academics are quite unhappy in their jobs. Sometimes you can't move for personal reasons. Sometimes you can't move because the job market is really bad. But I strongly believe that there is an institution for everyone. It's just a matter of finding that institution. And someone recently gave me a great quote, and I love that quote. So I'm going to try and repeat it and not get it wrong. Um, it's you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. So you can't change the people in your institution, but you can try and find a different set of people that you do enjoy working with. So think about that. And in the end, an academic career is what you make of it. And we have more flexibility and freedom in our careers than many professions. So I think we should at times take full advantage of that.
that is also true, isn't it? I mean, we are fortunate in a sense if we keep up with our own development and productivity, we have the opportunity, we have the choice to move, to
Yeah,
find ourselves just in the right community of
yeah,
colleagues and students and maybe the larger business environment.
yeah.
So we are fortunate in that sense.
Okay,
Yeah,
are there any other questions that,
I think we're good right now, so we'll move on to the
yeah,
late career.
late career? And yes, I was wondering whether we would have any late career academics in the session, but I think we do have some. So
We do have
even
some.
if you do, if you're not at the late career stage, you might still be interested to know what late career academics are thinking about. So late career, again, ABC, amplify, bridge, and contribute. Um, First of all, kind of coming back to that earlier question, what is early career? How many years? And what is mid career? How many years? How do we define late career stage? I would say, again, depends on personal, institutional, and country context, but I would be talking about academics who are at, say, the professorial level or maybe senior associate professor. And have been in academia for about 20 years, maybe a bit more. But for some academics, they might still be at a mid-career stage, even after 20 or 30 years in academia, and that's absolutely fine. And you might still find some of the things I discuss here useful. Now, of course, some of the things don't change with career stages. Several of the things at early career and mid-career stage are still relevant for your late career stage. But what I want to focus on here is what I think is an additional role that is very important for late career academics. And that is what I see as switching from a focus on your own career to supporting the career of others. And many of my ABC recommendations stem from this. So I have 3 here, but they can all be summarized under it is time to give back. It is time to give back to the academic community. It is time to give back to individual academics. So we have amplify the voices of junior academics, bridge individuals, fields, and communities, and contribute to what we call research ecosystems. Now, if we talk about the first one, amplify the voices of junior academics, I think a key role of senior academics is to support early career and mid-career academics. And you can do that in lots of different ways. You can do that by collaborating with them on publications or grant applications. And in that way allow junior academics to learn the craft through working with others, because that's a key way in which we diffuse implicit knowledge, is by working together. But you do need to make sure that it is a real collaboration. It's not just giving a few comments on that paper. It is about working together. You can also move from, as we talked about before, mentoring to sponsoring. Really think about what would help them most to progress their careers, not just tell about your own experiences. And there's one little thing that you can do which might have a big impact. Most senior academics receive far more invitations than they can accept to speak, to participate in panels, in committees, to give keynote speeches. So why not recommend one of your mentees for some of them? Obviously, they need to be suitable, but many times they are, but they're just not as well known as the senior academics. And your recommendation will really count, so it will give them an opportunity to shine. You can also improve their visibility simply by sharing their work and achievements on social media, or writing a nice email to them, CCing their line manager in, so the line manager also knows that they're doing a good job, or writing LinkedIn recommendations. I've been doing that a lot, and it's a really easy way to help other academics. And then the B is for build bridges between individuals, disciplines, communities. See yourself really as a bridge builder. As a senior academic, you have such a large store of knowledge. You have built up so many relationships over the years. So I would say use that knowledge and these relationships to help others. You can easily connect individuals with each other. One of my favorite activities is spotting people that I think should really work together because they have complementary skills but compatible work methods. And knowing so many different people, you can match up people easily. You can also set networks or special interest groups. I've done that, as Tamara said in the introduction, with SIGNA, the network for female academics. But you don't just need to focus on individuals. You can also play a role in connecting disciplines. Maybe different research topics, maybe different paradigms, different methods. Or you could be a linchpin in connecting academics with policymakers or practitioners. Or you could connect academics in different geographical communities. And of course, that is particularly effective if you've worked in different countries yourself. So whatever you do, build those bridges and make sure that you create synergies by connecting two entities, people, disciplines, communities that would both benefit from these connections. And that's a really beautiful thing to be able to do at its career stage. And then the last one, contributes to research ecosystems, or if you're already doing that, do more of that. It's really up to, I think, senior academics to take the responsibility to really play a big role in sustaining and improving research ecosystems. Lots of different ways we can do that. It depends really on your skills, your connections, your preferences. You could take on leadership positions in your own institution by being PhD director, research dean, head of department, or even dean. You could be taking on leadership positions in the wider academic community. You could be kind of a leader more publicly by being a public intellectual and engaging with the media. Or you could focus on building up the next generation of academics, as I talked about before, through being a mentor. In fact, you could do all of that at different stages of your late career, because a late career stage sometimes can be 10, 20 years. So again, you don't need to do everything at the same time with the same intensity, but just think about the ways you can help the academic community as a whole. And then the last words, the last key word for the third career stage, and I would say that's legacy. Late career is really about leaving a legacy. And I took this picture very purposefully because you may not have spotted it, but I started out with green for being a novice, being new. Then we moved to yellow for mid-career, and then we moved to red for late career. But as a late career academic, you still have a bit of green in you. You still have a bit of yellow in you. You're still a bit of an early and a mid-career researcher. You still need to ask questions, especially about things that, being a bit older, you don't relate to as intuitively as younger people might do. Things like artificial intelligence, for instance. We still need to balance many different plates in the air, professionally, personally. But as a late career academic, you have a better overview, you have a more complete idea of what academic research is about, what academic careers are all about. And you can then offer that as a gift to the next generation of academics. So I think it's really important for late career academics to think about how they can transfer all of what they have done to the next generation and give that gift before it's too late, before you are too tired and you're too fed up to do this. And I think there's nothing more beautiful than seeing your work that you've done during your academic lifetime live on in the minds and the hands of other people. So think about what you want that legacy to be. And even for early career researchers, maybe think about now. What would you like your legacy to be at the end of your academic career? So that's kind of
Yeah,
the end
that's,
of this
first of all,
section.
Anne-Wil, I just love your slides and images. They're very purposeful and very beautiful as well, signaling a lot of thoughts there. But, the last career or the, mature career, let's say, late career, it can be such a gratifying phase of one's life. I
Yeah,
mean, in a sense, giving back, there's nothing more gratifying, rewarding than
yeah,
that, giving
yeah.
back and helping young generation come along and sharing a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of your wisdom. Hopefully by then we have it and experience and make somebody else's life and career much more pleasant and enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a very nice phase, I think, to reach
Yeah,
because you're reaching out and making such an impact, and
yeah.
nothing more can be rewarding, I think, for most of us. You certainly have done that. I mean, you dedicated many, many years, and you generated so many resources, and you're still very active in helping various groups. Signa Group, for example, is an
Mm-hmm.
example. But we may want to talk a little bit about your, your blog posts, videos, and career guides that you have on harzing.com,
Mm-hmm.
because that's important too. I think there's some new people here who joined us, who were not here last time we had this conversation.
Yeah. I'm happy to briefly do that as well. There's a couple of slides here um, that give you some specific guidance. There's here I've included a lots of links, and when you get the handouts, you can actually click on all of those links, and they will take you to my blog, which has a lot of posts on academic related topics that a lot of them deal with publishing, with having research impact, research funding, but there's a lot more as well, even things about academic etiquette. What do you do? What do you not do in particular circumstances? How do you behave at conferences? Things like that. So have a look and see whether there's anything that is useful for you. And then there's also, I also have a YouTube channel, which includes videos of things that I've done at Middlesex, a writing boot camp that I've run at Middlesex, but there's also videos of other people, editor David Collins, who talked about his experiences as an editor, and the video that I mentioned earlier by Martina Sliwa on how to build a sustainable academic career, which I can highly recommend. It's one that I watch myself at least once a year, because every time I watch it, I see new things in it. And then there's also one about preparing promotion applications that you might find useful. And then there's also four guides that, or actually five by now, that I published in 2022 and 2023, dealing with what I think are some of the key topics in academia: publishing, research impacts, creating a public profile, but also for those of you going up for promotion writing, promotion applications. And then the Blue Book, that's a guide to the free Publish or Perish software for citation analysis. So all of these resources are available on my website. My website also has an overview of all the videos on my YouTube channel by topic. So what I will do is I'll just put a link in the chat with a page where you will find links to all of the resources, making it easier to find all of them. The career guides obviously are paperback or hardcover versions, but they're also available in ebooks. So you can also find those on my website. And I think there's one more slide, but that's the slide for the late career academic. Tamara, you were talking about wisdom, and to me, this is the animal that mostly reflects wisdom. So I think this is might be a nice slide to end with.
Beautiful slide. I was thinking, Anvil, in our profession, in academia, we have all kinds of individuals, and some are very protective of their time. They live in their own world. They work by themselves, perhaps, or with a
Yeah,
set of, small set
yeah,
of people they always
yeah,
work with. They don't reach out. I mean, they don't necessarily. So that's fine. That's their choice. But
yeah.
when I see people like you who are so generous, so dedicated, so concerned about helping the next
Hmm.
generation of scholars. I mean, it's just so inspiring and so comforting to
Mm-hmm.
have role models like you. I think a lot of, I know this, I don't, I have evidence who have uh, young people who looked up to you and said many times, very, very openly, how much they benefited from their interactions with you, as well as with your resources that you have
Mm-hmm.
developed over the years. So they're tremendously helpful, and it just speaks to your, generosity and good heart. So it's wonderful to see people like you. I mean, so thank you so much for everything you've done. We've gotten a lot of good comments, thank you comments from people who have joined us. So we appreciate everybody who joined us and shared some ideas also with us. I'm going to give you the last word, and Will, thank you again for
Thank
again
you.
being so generous, and
Yeah.
we'd love to see you again on a related topic. But I'll let
It's
you have
always a
the
pleasure.
last words.
Yeah, I was reflecting a little bit when you said those nice words, and yes, I have spent a lot of my time providing resources, helping other academics, but to me, that is really a crucial part of what being an academic is about. Um, but you don't all have to do that to the same extent as I have done. I have been able to craft my career in that direction. For some of you, that might not be a possibility. But I do still think that all of us, regardless of our career stage, can help others, can help colleagues. It doesn't have to take a huge amount of time. There are small things you can do for people, even just ask them after they come back from the lecture theatre and they're looking a bit, how was your class today? Is there anything? Would you like to come for a coffee? You don't need to have special knowledge to do that. Just be there to support your colleagues, and that makes all of our lives so much more pleasant. Because as academics, we are spending a lot of time in our academic community. So we have to co-create that academic community as a community that we want to be in, rather than work in academia despite the community. So let's do that. Let's co-create that academic
Indeed.
community.
Well said. Well said. So thank you so much, Anvil, for these very inspiring comments and guidance that you provided to us. There's a lot of appreciation. People who are here are sharing with us. I'll just remind everybody the slides, these wonderful, beautiful slides, will be mailed to you after the webinar. And when you log off, you will get an email with a short survey, 5 questions. So please respond to those as well. So thank you so much. Very special guest, Professor Anne-Wil Harzing. Wonderful to see you again, and hearing your guidance and mentoring. And we look forward to seeing everybody at our next webinar, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.